Hi, it's Jordan Teen 1, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make a really fun and pretty easy either Loomigurumi baseball or tennis ball. So the pattern is made the same way, it's just a matter of changing out your colors depending on which one you want to make. And as I said, it's pretty easy. It's basically just making the shape of a ball, and we're just adding some extra bands on certain stitches to make the seam pattern that you will then connect towards the end. So it's something that won't take you too terribly long to make, and it's a lot of fun to throw around or to give as a gift. My nephew is a big baseball player, so I thought that this would be nice to make for him, and also I had some requests, so it's a great thing for a quick and easy, fun summertime project. To make your ball, you're going to need a hook of some sort, so I have the Rainbow Loom metal hook, but you can use a crochet hook or whatever you have available. You're going to need some type of stuffing, so I have polyfill. And then I'm going to be using a twist tie to help me get my magic ring started, or you could also use the Loom, and both of those are optional tools, but I do find them very helpful. You're going to need a few clips or stitch markers, and then as far as your band counts go, you're going to need 68 red and 482 white. The very first thing I'm going to do is to take all of my red bands and I'm going to stretch them out. So I'm just going to really stretch them. You don't want to pull them so hard that they snap, but I'm just going to get them as large as I can, because if you don't have them large, when you attach them together, it's going to pull your circle and it's going to look bad. So you want them as stretched out as you can. So you're just going to do that for your red or whatever you're using for your stitch color. To begin the ball, we're going to make a magic ring of 6, so for that I have my 7 white bands. And I'm going to be using a twist tie to help me get my magic ring started, but if you were using the Loom, you would want the one that has the 6 fins. So I'm just going to take my twist tie, put it right next to my hook, and I'm going to triple my first band. So it's going to go on, twist, back on, twist, and back on one more time. I'll have the 3 loops, pull this up about halfway, bend it in half, and all that's doing is keeping those 3 loops together and just giving you something to grab onto. And then you're going to have 6 bands left. You're going to pull through your first one, back on your hook, 2 loops, one pulls through the other. From the front, push through those 3 loops, pull through your second, back on, you'll have 3 loops, one through the other 2, and then one at a time you're just going to pull through. And this is number 4. Five, and last one kind of gets a little bit tight with that twist tie in. Just going to take that out. And you just want to take a second and spread these as evenly as you can around the circle. Take your clip or stitch marker, place it on the band that's on your hook, and then that's going to give you your 6 stitches. So the stitch is the little sideways V on the outer edge of your magic ring, and if you count them, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then number 6, or whatever the last one in your row is always going to be the one with the clip. In row 2, you'll need 12 bands, and we're doing an increase in every stitch. So you're pushing through from front to back under both loops of your first stitch, pull through your first band, back on, one through the other 2, and then you're going back through that same stitch a second time, and you're going to pull through your second band, and that's the increase. Next stitch over, same thing, you're going to do 1, back through the same for your second. So we're just increasing in every stitch to start, and that's pretty typical, especially when you're making any kind of a ball shape. And then our increases are just going to gradually spread out. And here I have my last two. Let me just take out my clip so you can see a little bit better. And then I'm going to reattach my clip to the band on my hook. So we initially had 6, a stitch count of 6. Now we've doubled that, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then number 12 is going to be on your hook. You'll need 18 bands for row 3. We're doing an increase in every other stitch, so it's going to be a 1, 2, 1, 2 repeating pattern. So we're starting with a single, and then in the second stitch an increase, and then it's just going to continue to repeat. So I had played around with a lot of different sizes when I was making this, and I was going to do one with a stitch count of 36 as the largest, but when I started to make it I thought it was a little bit big, so I went ahead and reduced it. So our largest row is going to have a stitch count of just 30, and that's pretty close to what an actual baseball or tennis ball size is. If you compare it once it's done, it's pretty close. So I have one more set here of this pattern, and I'm ending with an increase. In row 4 you're going to need 24 bands, and we're doing an increase in every third stitch. So I'm starting with 2 singles, and then in the third stitch we're doing the increase, and then again just keep repeating. So we're just gradually widening out our increases, and then when we are decreasing at the end, it's going to mirror the same pattern that we did when we increased. So I actually used a baseball when I was designing this pattern. Every time I would do a row, I kept trying to match it up to the baseball, just to try and get them evenly spaced as far as the stitch pattern. Here's my last set. And again, we're ending on that increase. In row 5, you'll need 30 bands, and we're doing an increase in every fourth stitch. So we're doing our 3 singles. And then in the 4th stitch we have our first increase. And then once again you're just going to continue to repeat that pattern. And as I said earlier, this is going to be our largest stitch count of 30. So after this row we're going to do several rows with a stitch count of 30 to build the majority of the baseball. And starting with the next row we are going to start to add some of the red bands. And that part's fairly easy to do. I had actually tried many different methods as to how I was going to add the stitches of the red. I had tried to make separate pieces and stitch them together. I had done changes within each of the rows. I had done slip stitches to add the red within each row, and many different things, and this was about the easiest way that I could come up with to make it look like a baseball. So hopefully everybody else finds this way fairly easy to follow as well. Here's my last set of the pattern. And then last one gets the increase. In row 6 you're going to need 30 white and 10 red bands, and the whites are going to be 1 single crochet into each stitch, but we are going to add a doubled red band to stitches 5 through 9 and then also stitches 22 through 26. So we're doing 4 of the white by itself, and let me just count these out. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then in the 5th stitch what we're going to do is add our first red band. So you should already have them stretched out. You can see how much larger they are. What you're going to do is to put this on your hook, twist, loop it back on so that it's doubled. Then you're going to take your white band, you're going to pull through the 2 red loops through your stitch, back on, and 1 through the other 2. So all we're doing is adding this extra band, and it's going to form these 2 loops. So eventually when we stitch these together we want these to be even. We want the loops to be as even as we can, but for right now it's not really a big deal. So again we're going into the 6th stitch. So you're going to double your red band, take your white, pull through everything, not the one at your base, but through the stitch and the 2 red, and then 1 through the other 2. Same thing for the 7th. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to get this through without getting the red to pull through. You don't want the red to go through, so it kind of helps if they're about even, so you can just pull right through. Here's my 8th. Might have to do a little bit of extra maneuvering with your hook. And then number 9. And then we're going to have a stretch where they're just the plain white without the red. So that was 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and now we're on to stitch 22. Double your red, and then with stitch 23, another one on 24, $25, and then last red on 26, and then that should leave you with 4 more to get back to the start. So it's going to look pretty funky at first with all of these loops hanging off, and it's going to stay that way until we have the ball completed, and that's when we're going to link all of the reds together. In row 7 you'll need 6 red and 30 white, and you're going to do the reds on stitches 4, 9, 10, 20, 21, and 26. So we have 3 that are plain white. So that's 1, 2, 3. Now the tricky part here is you're having these loops, and you just have to be careful you're not getting your hook caught through a loop. So I would suggest just holding these back with your finger, and so you can just see the stitches. So push through. This is stitch number 4. We're adding a red loop. And then we have some plain ones here. So there's 5, 6, 7, 8, and now in the 9th one, we're adding the red. And also on number 10. And now we have 11. Whoops, didn't make it under both there. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and now on stitch 20, we're adding the red. Also 21. And then we have 22, 23, 24, 25, and here we have stitch 26, gets the red. Again, we have 4 whites till the end. So the next several rows, 9 in fact, are going to be done this exact same way, with 1 white in each. The only thing that's going to change on each row is where you place your reds. So I'm going to go ahead and let you do those rows on your own, and I will have it written out where you need to add the reds. And then once you get done all of those rows with a stitch count of 30, I'll show you how to finish it out with the rows doing decreases. Now I've completed through row 16, and before I continue to build this and start to do my decreases, what I'm going to do is to loop all of the red bands. So the first thing you want to do before you even start looping is you just want to make sure that the 2 red loops in each one of your sections are pretty evenly spaced. For example, if one loop is really big and the other one's little, you just need to get them so they're about the same height. So I'm going to start down here where my loose band is. I'm just going to go to the red that's sort of right above here on the curve. I'm going to go under both loops, and also you want to try and make sure that your loops are not twisted, that the bands aren't really twisted, because that's going to give it a nicer look in the end. So I'm going to get one of the sets of loops here on my hook, go through the next. Now you can just pull through with your hook, but I find that they kind of get a little bit twisted when you do that, so what I'm going to do is just use my fingers to just carefully keep that straight and pull over. And so it's really quite simple. I'm just going to keep following this around, make sure that I'm going under 2 loops, pulling the next set over, and really that's all there is to it. Just make sure that you don't miss any sets, and it's going to end up back at the beginning. So I'm not going to film this whole thing because it's so easy. Let me get through this. It's on an angle here. Again, try and make them nice and smooth. So you're just going to do that, follow all the way around, come back, and then I'll show you when you get to the end. Now I've made it all the way around back to the start, and I have 1 red and 1 white band I'm going to use to finish this off. So first I'm going to take my hook out. Just want to make sure that these 2 loops don't start to come apart. And then right where it's ended here, in between the 2 reds, I'm going to push up through, get these 2 loops back on my hook. Just make sure I have them both. And I'm going to take the red band, I'm going to go through those 2 loops, and I'm going to make sure I keep this in my hand. I'm going to pull down through. And then right where this first red was, you can sort of split it in the middle. That's where we very first started. I'm going to push up through, grab the other side of that red band, and pull through. So it should look pretty smooth and solid there. And then what I'm going to do is take this additional white band, and first of all let me pull 1 red through the other, so I'm just left with 1 on my hook, and then I'll go a little bit over here, take the white band, pull through everything, and make a nice and tight slip knot. So you should notice that it should be staying pretty nice for you here. You can see this sort of bent in just a little bit, but it shouldn't be pulling. That's why we stretched out those red bands. And if for some reason it is pulling your creation and making it really buckle and go out of shape, then you need to stretch your bands out a little bit more. And you can work your way around if you think there's places that should be a little bit closer together, or it looks like you can sort of see the stitch part where it goes down in. This has a little bit of wiggle room to roll to one side or the other, but in general it should look pretty smooth. In row 17 you'll need 24 white bands, and we are going to do some decreases. We're going to do 6 as a matter of fact, and everywhere you see a clip, that means we're doing 2 stitches together. So we're starting with 3 singles, and just make sure that you're going under just the stitch, that you're not slipping through any of the red bands by accident. So that was 2 and 3. And then the next 2 stitches, stitches 4 and 5, are going to go together for a decrease. So the way that I'm doing the decrease, I'm going in just the 2 outer loops. I'm going to skip the first stitch for just a second, go in the outer loop of this next stitch, pull back just slightly, and then slide straight through the first outer loop. So the bands make a little bit of an X on your hook. You're going to take this, pull straight through, back on just your 3 loops, and 1 through the other 2. Now we're going to do 3 more singles. And then again, the next 2 stitches go together for a decrease. So skip the first, outer loop of the second, pull back slightly, slide through the outer loop of the first that you had just skipped, and your band should pull straight through, and 1 through the other 2. Again, 3 more singles. So there are definitely different methods to doing decreases, and you can certainly use whatever method works best for you, but I found that this one is the easiest and I think looks the most appealing for me. Now I'm down to the next decrease. Whoops, grabbed more than just the outer loop there. I think after this row I am going to put the bulk of the stuffing in. You can see I'm really squeezing it here as I'm trying to work with it. So I have my 3 singles. Sometimes it's a little tough to get under the loops where you have the red bands. And then we have a decrease. So there's 3. And the decrease. Whoops, didn't quite make it through. And then that leaves this pattern one final time. And with the very last 2 stitches we have the decrease, so let me just take the clip out so you can see it a little bit better. So now I'm going to add my stuffing, and I do want to make this pretty full. I mean, you don't want to stuff it super full so that it's poking out through your stitches, but definitely you want this to hold its shape. And especially with this extra stitches around, it's making it want to cave in just a little bit here on the sides. So I would definitely suggest really packing it in, taking the time to push it in, and fill it pretty full. Now you don't want to fill it all the way so it's in the way of your stitches, and you will definitely have more time to add stuffing before it's totally closed off. In row 18, you'll need 18 bands. We're doing 2 singles and then a decrease. And again, we're doing 6 more decreases. So we're doing our 2 singles to start. And then we have a decrease in the next 2 stitches. Again, 2 singles. And then a decrease. So you'll notice that it is going to close off pretty quickly. And from where you do the increases and where you do the decreases, the 2 ends of the ball, they are going to look slightly different. It's just because that's just the way it turns out. It's just the nature of it all. But I think the nice thing about this way of decreasing is that it leaves the least amount of gaps, and so it stretches the bands less this way, and you're going to see less stuffing poking through. Another decrease, whoops. Didn't quite make it under there. And then it looks like I have one more set of the pattern. Again, let me just take out the clip. And as you do each row, you can add a little bit more stuffing if you feel you want to. I think I'll wait until I do the next decreases. In row 19, you'll need 12 bands. We're doing a decrease in every other stitch. So it's just the 1 single, and then a decrease right away. Again, just the 1, and the decrease. And just do your best to keep that stuffing out of your stitches. I know it's going to get really tough as we continue to do all of this closing off here. And just also do your best to try not to stretch out your rubber bands, the white ones here, since we are doing so many of the decreases. You want to keep the bands as tight together as you can. Here's my last decrease. You'll need just 6 bands for row 20, and they are all going to be decreases. Now this is really going to close off after this row, so any little bit of stuffing you want to add, and I would suggest you really pack it in there. Like I said, you want it to be really nice and firm. I know with a polyfill it tends to be kind of airy, and I don't usually stuff it this tightly, but I do with this ball. Just try not to make it too puffy along this outer edge here, because with the decreases that will have the most chance to have gaps. Even though I said this is the best method that I found, you still want it to sort of be loose so it sort of closes in and you will notice hardly any gap there. So I'm just doing a decrease every time here. And again, just have to be very careful about the stuffing. And also just be careful that you're moving over to the next open stitches. It kind of gets a little bit hard to tell when you do the decrease. It may look like you didn't go through a stitch, but you already have, since it's kind of a little bit more stretched out. And here's my last one. I'll take out my clip. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this off of my hook, and I'll just look around here. I think I'm going to pull up through here. Anywhere you think it looks like a little bit more of a gap, just kind of work this around. And then I'm going to take just one additional band to tie this off. Again, I'll look to anywhere I think might need a little bit of extra closure. Pull through everything, make a nice and tight slip knot. See a little bit of stuffing there. And then I'm going to just take the loop, pull it down in, and looks like there's a bigger gap sort of right here. So I'm just going to work this around. And you can always take an additional band. I'm going to just push this down a little bit to close this in. If you think that there's any kind of a gap that's larger that you don't like the looks of, you can always just take an additional rubber band and go through that particular section. Keep getting hung up here. Make a nice and tight slip knot, and then again just hide the loop inside. But in general it should be pretty closed off for you. And if you push the stuffing down and sort of squeeze this in, it should close off nicely. And then your baseball is complete. I hope that everyone loves their new baseballs or tennis balls. You can always leave me comments on YouTube and Facebook. You can post pictures of your creations to my Facebook page, and please feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and that way you can stay up to date on my latest tutorials. You can also find me on Pinterest and Instagram, so please post your pictures and comments there too. And if you do post a picture on Instagram, don't forget to tag me. Thanks for watching!